Innuendo, Book 5 of the Todd Mills Mystery Series. Author, R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher, Scribble Pub Press, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 3. Knowing what he did about Andrew. Knowing without question that he'd most definitely been gay, Todd also knew that he had information no one else did, which in fact was the ideal situation for any reporter to find himself in. Unfortunately, Todd was none the happier for it. Once Rawlings had pulled himself together and returned to the small apartment in the basement of the building, Todd studied his competition, this circus of media activity, zeroing in on the meat of their business. Cindy Wilson and her WTCN crew were claiming turf, setting up equipment so that the apartment building door would be right behind her. Another E&G truck had arrived, this one from WMDW TV, the third of the local affiliates, and off to the side, Todd took note of a reporter, a tall, thin guy from Minnesota Public Radio, who was speaking into a small digital cassette recorder slung from his shoulder. So, in the space of about 15 seconds, Todd realized that if he broadcast live from here, his coverage would be just like all the others, and that just wouldn't do when he possessed the opportunity to do something different, which of course was the name of the game. Much to his relief, he finally saw WLAK's big white E&G truck pulling up and parking on 25th. He then pulled his cell phone from his black leather jacket and dialed the station, getting immediately through to the assignment editor. "Steve, it's me, Todd. I'm here at this murder scene, along with every other reporter in town. It's kind of a zoo, but I think I've got a way to come at this thing that's entirely different." His was a deep voice that was no nonsense. No shit, just get to the point. "So what do you want from me?" "Another photographer, right away." "Aw, come on, Todd, give me a break. Do you know how short-staffed we are tonight? Besides, you've already got Bradley, and he's the best. Plus, you got the E&G fan. That's more than plenty." It was all about resources and the limit thereof. Todd knew that only too well. To get what he wanted, therefore, he knew he was going to have to come at this one hard and big. Keeping his voice low, he said, "Steve, like I said, this is a very hot scene, and this is potentially a big story." Yeah. "Listen, I knew the guy who was murdered. I met him a few times. He was only 17. He paused, not only for effect, but to make sure no one else could overhear. "And he was gay, which is why I want to do the report from another scene." There was only an instant of silence. "Let me check this with Craig." Todd was parked on hold while Steve went to confer with the 10 o'clock producer. It took all of 5 seconds. "Okay, I'm sending Mark," said Steve. "He's already on his way out the door." "Great. Just don't leave until he gets there." "Of course not." That was one thing you never did, leave a site like this unattended. Not at least until it was cleared. It might be hours and hours before the police left, but who knew what might happen during that time, and so you sure as hell didn't want to miss any shots, or worse, leave something for one of the other stations to get. "So where are you going?" asked Steve. "I knew where this kid used to hang out. I want to get some footage from over there." "Okay, so what do you want to do, a VOSOT?" "No," thought Todd. A voiceover, sound on tape, would require that at least part of the sound, say, an interview, would be married to the videotape. But Todd couldn't guarantee that, not with so little time. All that he could hope for was a simple voiceover. "No, let's just do a VO." "Sure." Todd hung up, then searched the crowd for Bradley, finally spying him camera on his shoulder. As he photographed the crowd, Todd wasted no time in working his way over there. "You got it all laid down?" he asked. "Yep, and then some," replied Bradley, who was sure to have gotten extra footage. "The cops, the crowd, the real estate, all just like you asked." "Great. Let me take the tape over to the truck. You stay here." In a low voice, he added, "We got another photographer on the way. As soon as he gets here, we're leaving. Just say when." "Cover the front door in the meantime." "You bet," replied Bradley, handing Todd the tape, then loading another. Todd wound his way through the crowd, a growing group of gawkers who were simultaneously stretching their necks and gossiping in whispers. As he neared the street, he saw that the ENG truck's mast, a towering pole with a microwave dish top, was already fully raised, even though they weren't all that terribly far from the Golden Valley station. Everything would have to be bounced off their downtown antenna. Todd came to the rear of the truck and knocked once. Jeff, the technician, immediately opened the door. A young guy with short red hair and a pasty complexion. He had a mountain of energy, which was usually what it took to get into this business and last more than a few months. "Hey, Todd, I want you to feed this back to the station right away. We're going to do a VO, so they're going to have to edit it. I want 15 of cops, 10 of real estate, and 10 of the crowd." "Sure. 35 seconds in all?" "Right. And as soon as you've sent that, I want you to pack up and go to this address," said Todd, taking out a pen and paper and writing it down. "Park across the street so we get full angle. And don't make any big deal about getting out of here either. Just do it as quickly as you can. We'll shoot live from there." "Yep." Todd turned back to the crowd, studied the scene, trying to get the story rolling in his head. Seeing a clump of neighbors gossiping, he thought he should drift over there and see what they were talking about. Glean what they might know. "Hey, Todd." He turned to see an attractive woman with big blonde hair and a big fake smile. She wore a puffy olive parka that made her slim body look all the trimmer. Gray pants and black shoes. Todd bristled immediately. "Hi, Cindy." Not so very long ago, during his days at WTCN, she'd worked for him. For a while, they'd attempted to be a team and even pretended to be friendly. But then, of course, Todd had been accused of murder, and she'd feasted on the story, hoping that Todd's demise would propel her rise. She had far less talent than she did ambition, though, and she was still groping for that career-making story. "What do you hear about this?" she asked with a coaxing grin. Todd shrugged. "A young guy was killed. Not much more. That cop over there. See the cute one with the light hair and mustache? He says they're already calling it a homicide." "That true? Was he gay?" Yes, of course it was. Some poor gay kid whose family kicked him out because he was queer. Has ended up in some dump of a basement with his throat slit. But who in the hell had leaked that? Never mind, he thought, just as quickly. For Cindy was a pro at using that smile and that figure. If she knew or even suspected, however, did that mean it was going to be all over her report? And would she press the issue, using Andrew's sexuality to paint him the deviant? "That's news to me." "Really?" she said, studying his face, searching for the truth. "Say, I've been meaning to call you. Arsenio Hall's coming to town next month, and I'm going to do a piece on him. Is he gay?" A friend of mine said he was. Said there were all these gay comedians. Louis Anderson. Paula Poundstone. In fact, my friend says all the men on Frasier are gay except for Frasier himself. What do you think, that true? That names of supposedly gay celebrities were continually flying. John Travolta, Richard Gere, Tom Selleck, James Spader, Kevin Spacey, Mark Harmon, Ellen DeGeneres, Rosie O'Donnell, Jodie Foster, Lily Tomlin. Some of them true, some of them not. But as always, the media, which had left in the closet such greats as Rock Hudson, Barbara Stanwyck, Errol Flynn, Tad Hunter, Cary Grant, and Malcolm Forbes, was shy of such things. "Cindy, you're walking through landmine territory. You know, you say stuff like that on the air and you're liable to get your ass sued, which actually would be just fine with me." "Well, I just thought that they were guilty of something." "God, Todd, you're so touchy." He didn't know why he said it, except, of course, that he remembered she was a huge fan of his, and it just came blurting out. "You know what I heard? That Tim Chase is definitely gay." "Him?" she said, as if she'd been slapped. "Dream on, Todd. That guy's so gorgeous. Don't be ridiculous." Behind him, Todd heard the familiar sound of an electric motor humming away. He glanced over, saw the mast on their ENG truck begin to lower. Nope, he couldn't let her see that. They were packing it in. No way in hell. He turned back toward the apartment building and said, "Hey, is that the medical examiner? Is he here already?" "Where?" "Up there. I think he just came out of the building." She was gone in a second, determined to miss nothing. Relieved, Todd wandered over to a group of 3 or 4 people who he assumed were neighbors because, as if they had just dashed outside, none of them wore jackets. Without trying to be too obvious, he slipped alongside them, tried to hear what they were saying. His eyes, of course, were elsewhere on the building, on the cops gathered off to one side. And it was then that his gaze fell upon someone in particular, a tall, thin young man. Todd noticed him at first because he just stood there crying. His eyes puffed and raw as tears came streaming unabashedly down his cheeks. Crushing the yellow police tape in both hands, he stared at the front of the door, his young, pale face transfixed with shock. He had very long brown hair that he flicked back with a shake of his head, and it was that movement, that toss of his silky mane, that made Todd realize something. Surely this kid wasn't even 20. But somehow Todd knew him. Somewhere. They'd met once or twice. But when and where? Instinctively, Todd started toward him, but just at that moment the kid lifted the yellow tape and lunged toward the building. The very next moment a couple of cops shouted out and came running over. Still the young man didn't stop, hurrying forward one long step after another, until the cops caught him and took him by the arms and pulled him back, shoving him once again beneath and behind the police tape. And as they herded him back, the kid said nothing. Did nothing to protest. He only stared with sodden eyes at the building. Of course, realized Todd, that's one of Andrew's friends. Todd beefed it up, hurrying around one clump of gawkers, another. He ducked around a tree, saw the kid just standing there looking as if he'd never move again. But then the next instant the young guy was gone immediately. Todd started both running and scanning, checking the sign of the building, the scattered clumps of people, and the various media. He looked toward the park, down the street, back toward the building, but there was no lanky figure with fine long hair hurrying away. Todd ran right to the spot where the kid had been standing and crushing the police tape in his hand, turned from side to side. Wait. There he was, scurrying across the street into the park. Todd burst forward, and then someone caught him by the arm. "Hey, Todd, I'm here. I made it." It was Mark, the second photographer. Todd glanced at him, then took one last look across the street as the kid disappeared into the park and the night. Next, Todd checked his watch. Running one hand through his hair, Todd said, "We don't have much time, do we?" "No shit," laughed Mark. The people on the technical side of things were always pretty macho, in part because they were mostly guys who were proud of the heavy equipment they lugged around. Mark, holding his Betacam beneath his arm like a large football, was no exception. With a sort of stocky, square body, he had hair that was cut into short bangs while the back was long, almost shoulder length. It was the perfect Minnesota hockey haircut, and Mark stood there chewing gum and grinning, ready to play any game. This was going to be close, and he loved it. Todd said, "Just keep this place covered until we get back." "You got it." "Where the hell's Bradley?" "Right over there." Todd saw him and darted through the crowd. He grabbed Bradley by the arm, and the two of them made their way out of the crowd, around a few cop cars, and towards the Jeep. "I think we're going to make it?" asked Bradley, a twinkle in his eyes. $5 says we will." "You're on." They had less than 3 minutes, and Todd wondered if there was a chance in hell. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time. being true to their values.